We've got a very special guest on tonight, Graeme Howlett from kneesupmotherbrown.com. Graeme, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, JP. Thank you for having me on.
You're more than welcome. It's nice to probably be able to talk to you. I was going to say face to face, but it's face to black at the minute, guys. Just to let you know, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with your phone. It's just Graeme doesn't have a working webcam, so it's going to be a little bit shaded from his point of view. But what I need to first of all talk about, guys, obviously, is the channel sponsor 3retro.com. Please click the link in the description below that will take you directly through to the West Ham section of their website, where you can purchase retro kits from the 60s all the way through to the early 2000s, including the 1976 home kit that inspired our season's home kits, and also the 1980 FA Cup final away kit that inspired the away shirt. But not only just that, guys, we've had some. I was literally talking to Davey at 3 Retro earlier yesterday. He's confirmed that they've got some replica shirts out here, which, as you can see, is the Boys of '86. It's a brand new replica shirt that only came onto the website yesterday. So this is the home shirt, which, to be honest with you, bearing in mind that I'm wearing the original, it's not a bad replica, to be honest with you. And obviously this is the away shirt as well, which is, by the look, from what I saw on the website earlier today, it looks like the away shirt is pretty much selling out. There are so many, there's hardly any sizes left in the away shirt. So guys, I'm guarantee the home shirt version is going to sell out pretty quickly as well. So go check those out. Also, within the link in the description below, there are also Admiral and Umbro track jackets, polo shirts, sweatshirts, and t-shirts available, and also which are basically West Ham inspired. They're absolutely beautiful. But you don't have to purchase just any of the West Ham stuff. There's England shirts in there as well. They've got some new English stuff coming as well. Once they tell me what's going on with that, I'll let you guys know as well, because for example, I bought the Italian 90s shirt that I used for the World Cup last year's videos. I got that through there as well. There's loads of England shirts. There's even Dortmund. There's a very nice Liverpool 89 Ian Rush replica shirt they've come out with as well. So go purchase those. Any purchase that are made through the link in the description below for the next 17 purchases, because when the affiliation first came out, I did say that the first 20 purchases will be going to Isla's Fight. We've had three purchases so far, which is great news. We've got over a tenner to send to the charity now. But guys, I want us to have a lot more in there than just that. So guys, as I say, we're talking to Graeme from Knees Up Mother Brown. By all means, if you've got any questions for Graeme, put them in the live chat, and I'll read them out for him as well. So because I'm sure there's a few people who are going to want to ask him a few questions in regards to that. But so Graeme, first and foremost, mate, how exactly did Knees Up Mother Brown start?
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to go back into the mist of time now to
actually, before you do that, Graeme, I just want to say, if anybody under the age of 30 is watching this, I reckon Graeme's going to give us a bit of an education about how everything started. So go for it, mate.
Give it a go. Well, it all started in the summer of 1997. I'd basically spent the 90s having a lot of fun and partying, and decided that it was time I got myself a trade. So in the 80s, I was one of the generation that was very fortunate to grow up with home computing, and was one of those that sort of dabbled in programming, never really got too involved in it, but knew my way around a computer.
So was that like having an old BBC computer or Commodore 64 or anything like that?
Yeah, all of those. It started off with a Sinclair ZX81.
It crashed more times than anything else.
Yeah. The old wobbly 16K RAM pack. Yeah, those were the days. Things have moved on a lot since then. And so, it was, we learned to program in a language called BASIC, but without going into too many details, it was quite easy to get into, and it was something that sort of stuck with me. So kind of fast forward about 15 years or so. And here we were in the summer of 97, and I was looking for a trade, and I decided I want to get back into programming. So I needed a project upon which to kind of learn, the basics of web development, building websites, that sort of thing. And so it was really a choice of one of two things, really. It was either do a website based on music. I was quite heavily into my music at the time, still am, always have been, very musically inclined. Or football, which is my other great love. Really the two kind of working class things that most of us really get into. Sport of some sort of music.
So how did West Ham come into your life before you started doing these up Mother Brown?
So I'd been a West Ham supporter all my life, really. My father was a season ticket holder. My mum used to go quite a lot in the 60s. Her father and her mum were season ticket holders, and quite possibly beyond that. But it's always been a family thing. That my mother's side came from Manor Park. My dad's family were from East Ham. So we were quite sort of entrenched in everything that was West Ham and Claret and Blue. So to become a West Ham supporter was really just a natural thing. And the first game I ever saw, remember watching, was on TV, and it was the FA Cup final, which was pretty much in those days the only games that were on TV. This was the 1975 Cup final against Fulham. My dad and my grandfather were at the game, and I sat at home with my mum and watched the game. And from that moment on, I was kind of transfixed by it. It was a good time, of course, to be a West Ham fan.
Definitely. I mean, just interject there, Graeme. How old were you when that cup final was going on?
I think I was just 6 when we won the cup then. So very, very young and impressionable age. And it's rare that you meet West Ham fans that could possibly describe themselves as glory hunters, but that may well have been the case for me, because we won the FA Cup the following year. We were back in the Cup Winners' Cup final. 4 years later, we were at Wembley again to win the FA Cup final, and the following year we got to the League Cup final. So, in the space of the first 7 years of being a supporter, we'd been in 2 cup finals, won it twice, been to a European Cup final and a League Cup final. So, and been relegated, of course. So it's quite a whirlwind of emotions in those first few years. But I mean, I suppose it's as near as glory hunting as you can possibly get as West Ham supporters go. I'd always been a supporter, and my dad had taken me from 1976, I think was my first game. We played Derby County, and there was a couple of players playing called Charlie George, who some of your older listeners will remember. He used to play for Arsenal, scored for Arsenal in the 71 Cup final before moving on to Derby. And a guy called Kevin Hector. But in true West Ham tradition, we lost that first game I went to. I think it was 2-1. We lost. Derby were a decent side at the time, so it wasn't too demoralising. But it kind of set the path for the next 40 years, really, of being a West Ham fan. So coming back to the site, there I was in sort of summer '97, and I decided to learn how to build websites. And in the end, I decided that it was going to be a football-based website, and so obviously it was going to be West Ham. And so I sort of looked around for ideas, and at that time, Gary Furbage's Overland and Sea was very, very popular still. The fanzine, the web back then was kind of in its embryonic stages. I think there was one independent West Ham website which was run by a guy called Paul Wilkins. It was the South African West Ham website, and funnily enough, Paul and I became very good friends. Some years later, and actually played together in a West Ham supporters team for a number of years. Still keep in touch now, even though he's in America now. He's very well travelled, is Paul. But it was very new at the time. The West Ham's own website had only been online for about a year or so. So everyone was kind of just feeding their way around. And so I decided to pretty much emulate what Gary Furmage was doing with Olus, but online. And so that meant, I was trying to get contributors to send articles in and that kind of thing. I was doing some news updates, but it was very much a fanzine more than a news-driven website, which is obviously what it became in the years to come. And so I specifically remember being absolutely delighted the first week it went online, which was it was 22 years ago this month. It was August '97, and I got 26 views in the first week.
Wow.
Now, you as you know yourself, you've not been doing this so long, and when you get it up and running and you finally get people coming on and looking at what you've done, it's a real buzz. So even though we've gone on and we do ridiculous numbers now in comparison to that still was a real highlight for me. But it really set the scene, and after a while I managed to get some contributors come in and pop articles on. I began doing, as I say, news on a regular basis. We did match reports and that sort of thing. And it's quite funny because you can still see the original version of Knees Up Mother Brown on the web. There's a site called archive.org, which pretty much backs up everything that's ever appeared on the web. I mean, it's incredible. The servers that they run must run into the thousands to host all this information, but you can actually still go back there and look at Knees Up Mother Brown, the original version, and it was called the Online Fanzine at the time. Yeah, that was it really. I mean, as I say, the original idea was just to set up a project so that I could learn the basic skills of web development, web design, and get into that as a career. And for a project that was supposed to last 6 to 7 weeks, here we are 22 years later, and it's now my it's now my full-time occupation. It has been for a number of years. So it's kind of funny how what fate has in store for you in a way. But yeah, that's really how it started.
Well, I won't say what a good friend of the channel, Charlie Walsh, has said in the live chat, because it's going to make both of us feel really old. What he said in there.
Yeah.
But Charlie, it's great to see you, mate.
Yeah.
It's great to see you, Darren. Thank you very much. Nice to see you, good mate. I'm good. I hope you're doing well as well. Thank you to everybody else that's watching as well. But yeah, if you didn't read that, I knew Charlie was younger than me, but I didn't realize it was that much. Jesus Christ. All right. So so what made you try and change the what's the way of the scope of the website from being a fanzine to go into the news section that you do, or at some point over the last couple of months has been almost on an hourly basis because of everything that was going on with the transfer window and whatnot? But what made you decide to expand it and then get to the level that it is now?
Well, in about 2000, I got a job up in the city working for a law firm as their intranet developer, and the fortunate thing about that was that it afforded me time and opportunity really to work on the site in my spare time. I'd work doing news updates in the lunch hour, and so on. But then there was I think it was about 98, 99, the idea of online forums came about, and they were far removed from the kind of forums and far developed software that you see these days. They were just simple threads where someone would reply and so on, and you'd have simple threads like that. And it was quite difficult to keep up to date with, but we sort of stuck with that, and that really developed. And that obviously became one of the core elements of the site, the forum. And even though, as I say, if you look on if you look at KUMB, we've got a news archive that's got 22 years worth of news on there, 22 years worth of articles, 20 years worth of match reports, and I believe it's possibly the most extensive archive of West Ham related content on the web. It's certainly got an awful lot more on there than West Ham's own website, which I think only goes back to about 2010 now, their content.
That's right, yeah.
But, you can, but the forum, we got the current version of the forum software up and running in 2002, and it's just been a godsend to the site. It just became instantly popular, and it was really just a question of being in the right place at the right time. There wasn't certainly anything particularly special about it. It was just that we were there and probably first and have kept it going, which is why it's become so popular over the years. But yeah, it's fabulous, and we've lots of people have managed to meet up. I think there's probably a few relationships that have begun as a result of people meeting on the KUMB forum and things like that. But yeah, so it's probably around 99, 2000 when we sort of it moved direction slightly.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, so in terms of the forum, because obviously the more people you had, the bigger you had to make it, and the more varied of content that you allowed them to do. So over that, okay, so you said that was 2002. So over in the last 16, 17 years, how do you feel that supporters? Do you feel that there's been a subtle but consistent change in how supporters talk to each other, their opinions on things? I mean, is the conversations that people have? Because I know I've gone on the forum a few times, but in terms of what you've noticed there, do you notice that there's been a bit of a dynamic shift in how people talk on the forum in terms of how it was when it first came out?
don't think it's really changed that much in terms of Knees Up Mother Brown, because we've always had a very strict policy in terms of what we do and don't allow in terms of content. I mean, you know, we filter out swearing, for example, which some people just find hilarious these days, given what goes on in social media. But, you know, someone once said that we run a very tight ship there, and it's probably quite accurate. You know, we try to ensure that people treat each other with an element of respect. And we have one of our former moderators, Romford, who was with us for many years, you know, but I had the idea that people should really treat each other the way they would as if they was in a pub, you know, face to face. And that mantra has kind of really stayed with us over the years. And, you know, the thing about the forum is it predates social media. The forum was running before Facebook or Twitter or Instagram were ever even heard of, which makes it sound incredibly old. But you know,
even
always,
before stuff like MySpace came out as well. That shows you how old
I think
stuff
it was,
is for those youngsters listening that I can't really get their minds around it, because it was, I think MySpace was literally like the first social media network, wasn't it? I think close to it.
It would have been, I suppose that that what you could probably accurately describe as social media. That was probably one of the original sites. I mean, I'm talking, you know, we were starting when Napster and that were going.
Oh Jesus,
the original music file
as well.
Yeah, of course, of course. So you know, as I said at the start, at the top of the show, we really are going back into the mist of time. But so as I said, you know, we've tried to keep it that way and ensure that everyone treats each other. You know, people have got different opinions at the end of the day, but we just say, you know, we accept everyone's opinion within reason, as long as they stay within the law and, you know, common decency. But we strive to give everyone a voice, and I think one of the reasons we've always been and continue to be so successful is because we try to give everyone a voice. I don't care if you hate the board or if you love the board, you've got, you know, you will always have a platform on Knees Up Mother Brown to express that view. Although it might not seem that way sometimes, because, you know, so many people are you know, pitching for one side or the other. But you know, we've always tried to do that. We've always tried to make sure everyone's got the opportunity to speak, and I think that's why we're still carrying on, you know, after 22 years.
Of course, I mean that's the whole point, because, you know, we live in a so-called free civilization nowadays, even though it's not civilized, and, you know, everyone's got the right to express their opinions. It's just, for one thing I've noticed over the last few years, not just the forum that we're talking about, but forums in general, and I'm including Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that sort of stuff. Is it kind of, from an outsider's point of view, because I know it's just, you know, as you say, you edit it all together and make sure that there's people aren't being out of order. But I notice there's a lot of hatred that is on social media. I know it's very easy for everybody to sit behind their phones or their laptops, whatever, and just spout out stuff they would never do in normal life. But I just don't understand why people go to such lengths. For example, like you said about some of the stuff that people come out with about the board, you know, ex-West Ham employees had a lot of negativity thrown at him for unjustified reasons, in my personal opinion. You know, and likewise, like with, even if it's not just our lot, it's our fan base in football fan base in general. You know, reading earlier today that after Pogba missed the penalty last night, apparently he got a tirade of racial abuse on it. I mean, there's like, you know, there's no need for stuff like that. And the worry, as good as social media is and as good as forums are, because like you said, you know, there's been conversations and friends and relationships that have come out of it over the last close to 20 years. There's always that breeding ground for toxicity that I really don't see why people want to do that. I mean, have you noticed anything that's been growing over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the issue that you have with social media is that it's essentially anonymous. No one's accountable for their actions, or you know, you have to do something particularly bad to get picked up on it. You know, this thing. I mean, the issue with this latest batch of issues with Pogba and Tammy Abrahams. The problem is there are idiots out there. And there are idiots who have got access to mobile phones and electronic devices by which they can communicate with the rest of the world. I do find it a little bit odd that you know, we concentrate on this. I mean, there's millions of people out there, and you're always going to get a handful of idiots in any social group, depending upon the size. And you know, we really shouldn't be giving them the oxygen of publicity, in my view. You know, but you will always be able to find that in any situation. But yeah, what it comes down to, I think, John, is essentially that it is anonymous. Twitter, especially so. It's so easy to create an account. You can get thrown off, and within, you know, a couple of minutes, you can be back on with it with another under another pseudonym with a different account. And I think they probably have to be a little bit more accountable as well. The people that run these sites.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's just it's just human nature. You know, there are some people out there who don't have a lot going on in their lives, and for them, that's how they get their entertainment. And you're always going to get that in you know, in any field.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, just in general, it doesn't matter what sort of regulations and rules you put in, people are always going to break it, and people are always going to. I mean, I'm always a big advocate of free speech, you know, but there is a certain level that a lot of people are unjustifyingly getting, I should say. You know, and it's quite good to see what Harry Maguire said earlier today on his Twitter account about that. You know, there needs to be more regulations around certain words being published. Like, for example, here with the live chat, if someone starts swearing in there, it comes up as a moderator thing. If you say, you know, do you want show this or hide it? And
yeah.
I honestly think that I know this is asking the world for, because, like you're saying, going back to talking about archive.org, you know, they have a plethora of servers, and Twitter will have to have the same thing for this. But at the same point, there should be some form of coding in there that says, right, certain words aren't allowed to be used. I mean, of course, that, you know, that turns it into a 1984 style life. But at the same point, there, because like you say, because I could go on my Twitter account and tweet something, and somebody over in Malaysia or Las Vegas could read it and go, well, you know, what the fuck are you talking about, and all this sort of stuff. But and because of that, it needs to be a little bit more regulated. But just trying to bring things up to date a little bit more. I mean, first and foremost, Graeme, I am really glad that you and I had a conversation last summer about the content for the channel, because you publishing the videos that I'm doing under KUMB, West Ham Fan TV section that you got on the website really helped boost this channel last year. So I waited this. I didn't want to tweet you about it, but I was going to say personally, one-to-one is about as close as I can get at the moment, to personally thank you for doing that, because the channel was literally, before you and I started talking in, what was that, July last year, I think it was, give or take. The channel was like 45 subscribers. Now, a year, just over a year or so later, with this close to getting to 1,000. So it's brilliant. It's not been astronomical growth, but you know, you are one of the reasons why this channel is the way that it is, and I do personally thank you very much for doing that, Graeme. But coming on to that, because obviously we talked over the last few weeks about you updating the website for KUMB TV. So is that actually now up and running still? Is there still a few little tweaks to go? Yes,
it is. Just before I come on to that, and going back to what you just said there, I mean, I appreciate your very kind comments there. But you know, I think you're pretty much in the same boat I was in all those years ago, where it's just a question of perseverance. You know, you have to start from somewhere, and it's just a question of sticking at it. And you know, you've done a good job. You spent the last year, you're pumping out content, and that's all you can do. And that's how you pick up subscribers. It's the same with anything.
I mean, it did make me laugh when you and I were talking. Was it last week? And you asked me if I'm still single. So, and I went, yes. That's why I'm able to do so much as I can.
Yeah, I should stress I wasn't chatting you up in case anyone's wondering. It
kills your social life. I mean, you know, I mean, hats off to you for the length of time that you've been able to stay married for. What was it, 25 years now, give or take? Wasn't it the other week?
Yeah, it's a few less than that, but it feels like it sometimes. But it's funny actually. It was my daughter's birthday this week, my eldest, and I actually wrote about her birth on KUMB. So that's how long it's been going, because we looked back at it this week, and it was all about you know, me dashing to the hospital. Up to the neonatal ward and all that, so it was quite funny, and it's just a mark of you know, how quickly it's sort of passed, really. But yeah, I mean, sort of coming on to you asked about the redesign of KUMB TV. I suppose I should let your listeners know that we're we are relaunching KUMB this week. It's or in the next couple of weeks. It's the first time we've we put a new front end on the site for the first time since about 2009. So it's certainly been a long time coming. There's a lot of technologies come and gone in that time. But one area of that is KUMB TV, and pretty much as we've done from the very beginning of the site, we're trying to give a platform to anyone who's putting out independent content, independent West Ham based content, I should stress. And obviously now, with a lot of that coming in video form from people like yourself and Hammers Chat, West Ham TV, Katie, who I've had the good fortune to speak to in the last few days, and a few others, especially some of the guys from the States, American Hammers, Irons United, people like that. What we're trying to do is give all of you guys a platform where people can go to one specific place and they can get all of that content in one go. Now, I know you can go to YouTube and flick around, and you can be subscribed to various channels, but this is offering it within sort of a West Ham environment, as it were. So that's really going to be one very central part of the relaunch. And so with that in mind, I would just like to say, if you don't mind me using this to advertise it quickly, if there are any...
As I said, this channel wouldn't be in the position that it is now without your assistance, mate, so go for it. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. But, if there are any independent content providers out there that do put stuff on YouTube, please get in touch with me. You can contact me via all the usual social media channels, or via Knees Up Mother Brown. There's their contact details on there, and just let me know what your channel is, and we'll make sure that you're part of that of KUMB TV. Because things are changing, and this is the difficulty. It's you've always got to try and keep abreast of the latest technologies, especially in this game. As I say, first, it was news originally and match reports. Then we had the forums, and now obviously in the last few years it's moved very much towards direct video content, with people getting content out there, especially in matches, for match reports. I mean, you've got you guys standing outside the stadium, people like Nicky and Ryan at West Ham Fan TV, who pioneered that as far as West Ham are concerned, in terms of getting a microphone and getting in people's faces immediately after the final whistle, and getting that content out there. But yeah, that's really what we're trying to promote and give a platform to, and just try and support everyone in the in the West Ham content making or independent content providing community, because I think West Ham have got they're doing enough for themselves on the website.
Well, Charlie Walsh is throwing his toys out in the pram. I know he's joking around, but it's quite a funny message he's put in. So you're saying you don't want my wrestling videos, Graeme? You're lost, big man. You're lost.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what sort of videos Charlie's talking about there. I don't know if he's talking about his own personal ones or what.
Do not elaborate on what you mean by this, man. Just to be clear, we do have some juniors that watch this, so don't elaborate. Yeah, so let's try and bring things up a bit more up to date, Graeme, because it's it's just to say I've been waiting a long time to have a conversation with you. So, sure. And there's also there's questions I want to ask you. But yeah, it's quite nice to be able to talk to you properly rather than just through the phone the whole time. Right. So first and foremost, because obviously we've now got to get to well, we don't have to, but I'd like us to talk about Saturday week, the City game. What were your thoughts on the opening game? I mean, first and foremost, I mean, what did you think about the team sheet that was put out?
Well, it was. I think we were always on a hiding to nothing with that first. I mean, it was such a terrible game to get as the opening game of the season. But we've had it every year for the last 5 or 6 years. We joked in the run up to the fixtures being released in June, that we'd already had 5 of the top 6, so don't bet against it being Man City away. And of course, it turned out to be Man City at home, so it wasn't quite right. But there does sometimes. I know sometimes we think that the Premier League have got it in for us, but that's an incredible coincidence, isn't it? Don't you think that we've managed to get all 6 teams on the first week? But the issue with that is that if you get off to a bad start, you're already playing catch up from the very first weekend of the season, and that's been our problem.
But at the same point, I know what you mean, mate. But at the same point, I mean, yes, catching up on a -5 goal difference with the first game of the season doesn't help. But at the same point, we are never going to be. I mean, I'd love to see it before I die, but I don't think we'll ever be on the same level that Man City are. I mean, they complete when they came back into the Premier League. What was it? 12, 13 years ago. Even then, they started overtaking us in terms of quality before the Sheikh Mansour days. So it's awful to say. I hate saying that I go at the stadium thinking I'm not going to enjoy this. And I enjoyed the day because there's always a special buzz about the first game of the season, regardless of who the opposition is. I mean, anybody that has more intelligence than a glass of water would know that we're not going to get a decent result. In terms of we're not going to get all 3 points. We'd be very, very lucky if we were able to get a draw out of them. But for me, I just wanted to see how Fornals and Allaire were going to be in the Premier League game. Obviously, Fornals, we only got a small glimpse of him, but it was as Gio quite lovingly loves to say all the time. It's a bonus game. We just go there because it's West Ham more than anything else. But at the same point, as I said when I came back and did the live discussion with Ben, we matched them toe for toe for the first 20 minutes. I was loving this. All of a sudden, there seemed to be a dynamic shift in City, especially with second half. I mean, Graeme, what was your thoughts on the first half before we come to the second half?
Well, in some ways, John, it was a bit like that game we played against them in China, wasn't it? We in that game we went 1 up. Should have been 2 up. We should have had a second penalty, but it wasn't given. I'm sure it would have been if we had VAR, but there you go. And then we certainly played well. Yeah, we got off to a good start, but you're constantly looking at Man City, and you always know that they're just capable of catching you on the break, and it's game over. And excuse me, they scored. They scored very quickly, didn't they? After the restart, and then they scored again, didn't they? A couple of minutes later, and we had that ludicrous decision where it was. And I still now I'm not sure why it was ruled out.
I think to be honest with you, Graeme, not to interject, but to be honest with you, from looking at Match of the Day that night and looking at the photograph that went up for hours about it, I honestly think it was just because it was a couple of inches of his shoulder, the shoulder blade, and that's why it was offside. But being at the game, nobody knew what was going on. I mean, we saw the dots, but everyone was kind of like, well, of course it's offside. Jesus is 3 or 4 yards offside, but we didn't actually realise until the time that it was the shoulder from Sterling's shoulder, if I remember correctly, wasn't it? That there was. I
think it was
offside.
It was.
I don't know. I mean, now we're talking about it. Now that we've been able to see VAR over a 12-month period, because obviously it was heavily used in the World Cup. What are your thoughts about it?
I'm a big advocate of it, and I appreciate I'm one of the few remaining at the moment.
Well, there's 2 on this channel because I've been singing its praises ever since last summer.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. It's rare to find someone that's actually quite supportive of it at the moment. But the point is, there's absolutely no way if that goal had been scored last season that it would have been disallowed. I mean, we both know that it would, and quite possibly the penalty the penalty save would have stood as well. Mm-hmm. So it kind of works both ways. But we did a season-long survey on the Knees Up Mother Brown forum 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, it's probably a little bit longer than that now because Kevin Nolan was still playing, I think. But we basically wanted to test the theory that these things tend to cancel each other out by the end of the season, and it's all swings and roundabouts. You get as many decisions in your favour as go against you, and it essentially turned out to be a load of old bollocks, basically. Because we had so many decisions go against us that season, and we see it every year. I mean, for example, that one last year at Bournemouth, where we were winning 3-2, I think, with we were 3 minutes into injury time, and they got who was it scored? I can't think who it was. Was it Wilson? I think it might have been Callum Wilson, but it was a quite blatant handball. And you look at that and you think,
that you got a brace that night, if I remember correctly, didn't he?
I think he did. Yeah, I think that was his second. And you're looking at that. I think this just not fair. And especially when there's so much money involved in the game as well these days, and those things can't be allowed to continue. And I think if you've got the opportunity for technology to overrule that, then that should be a good thing. It's quite clear that they haven't got VAR right yet, and I think, like all these things, it will take a bit, take time to bed in, and for the technology to be worked out correctly, and for them to determine exactly what they should be overruling and shouldn't be overruling. I mean, I still maintain that was ludicrous. I should stress I did realise why it was disallowed, but I felt it was a ludicrous decision to start ruling goals out. I mean, you saw this one the other day, didn't you? Talking about Man City. Against Tottenham, and that was just ridiculous. And I know the rule is now if it hits any part of the hand or the arm, it's automatically handball. But you need a little bit of common sense, and that's not right. So it's things like that need to be ironed out, and they will be over time. And I'm sure eventually it will be beneficial to the game. But it's not right at the moment. You can't have the situations we've had, really, and there are points now. I think we've got teams sort of only semi-celebrating the goal because they're not sure whether it's going to stand, and they don't want to look silly 30 seconds later when it gets ruled out. But yeah, I'm definitely in favour of it.
One thing that I agree. I think it's a great tool to reinforce the rules. Doesn't necessarily mean the rules are right. For example, the goalkeeper not being allowed to move off the line until the ball's kicked. That is a massive disadvantage. For example, especially if you're a goalkeeper in front of somebody like Paul Pogba, right, who fakes kicking the ball before he actually kicks it. He's done that a couple of times, and so it opens the rule to that. The new rule about the handballs, where if it hits any part of the arm, be it accidental or not, it's automatically ruled as a foul. That does my absolute head in as well. But this is the thing: everybody's criticizing VAR for the fact that it's showing how bad the rules are, instead of actually talking about it's the rules that are causing the problem. I mean, I know Gary Lineker said it on Match of the Day Saturday night, because he mentioned something about it as well. But exactly, I mean that what was it? The goal that should have given Man City all 3 points, it bouncing off his arm, literally just brushes off it, and therefore it's a foul. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that isn't. I mean, people have bundled that in with VAR as being sort of culpable for that decision. But you're absolutely right. That is in the laws of the game now, and that's nothing to do with VAR. VAR is just pointing out that that law has been broken, which is not VAR's fault at the end of the day. But I should stress, actually, that you're a braver man than I watching Match of the Day after that Man City game, because I'm one of those who can't. I cannot watch Match of the Day if we've lost, especially if we've taken a good thumping. I mean, I only got to see it on the replays at the time. I mean, it's the law, as always, the laws of the game are problematic. I mean, we've had this for years. I mean, I'm sure you can remember a few years ago playing Liverpool at the Boleyn when Luis Suarez was deliberately trying to kick the ball at people's arms in the penalty area to win a penalty. And the rule and the law now states that if that happens, it's a penalty. So what's going to happen? Surely that just means you can have people like Suarez, sort of career cheats, as it were, attempting to win penalties in those scenarios and circumstances, which can't be right. So, you're absolutely right. That's not down to VAR. That's down to the laws and the way they're applied. Now
you've said that, it reminds me of a memory I've got for a long time ago. I think it was where it was Spurs. I think it was when Redknapp was the manager. I think it might have been that game when no, it wasn't that game, because it was when we had Da Costa. And one thing, I mean, I quite liked Peter Crouch up until this game.
Right.
Because I thought he was an entertaining bloke. I thought he was a good footballer. This would have been the season we got relegated, if I remember correctly. And we had a corner down at the Bobby Moore end. And Crouch was, I'm not joking, Crouch was kicking 7 shades of shit out of Da Costa to try and get a reaction from him. Nowadays, if that was done, VAR would in theory would deem that as a foul, and the corner would have then we would have had a goal kick out of it as a result. But the problem is with VAR, and if I remember correctly, when I did the video about the new rules coming in, VAR is only being used in circumstances leading to a goal. It's a great way to start, but I don't think it's the right place to start at the same point. Because if you're going to use something like that, and I'm sure in a few years' time it's going to be used for everything, but I just don't see the logic behind only looking at handball claims, penalties when shit happens outside the box throughout the entire field, and they're not going to be looked at for that. It just doesn't feel right, because Nicky said it the other week, and I agree with him 100% on this. Is the fact that we don't know what's going on. I said a couple of minutes ago when VAR was used for the first time at the London Stadium, was like, what are they calling? Even now, when on Saturday with Brighton, I didn't know what they were checking VAR for. It's nothing's ever announced. It should be announced, all right. VAR. The second the goal's kicked, the goal is scored, or ball goes in the back of net, whatever. There should be an announcement that says we are checking VAR for X and Y, whatever the situation is, because at least then you stop having situations with City's third goal when it was scored and the City fans were celebrating, and then it came back saying no, it's not a goal, and then the rest of the stadium started celebrating. Just to mock it more than anything else. And sometimes, as we saw with the first time VAR was used for the claim of that penalty against on Lanzini, within seconds, it was like checking VAR. No red card. I think the decision was. But even then, we didn't know what the red card was for. But as I say, there needs to be some. And I said it to Nicky after the game as well, that there needs to be consistency. We had 7 times VAR was used, if I remember correctly, in that City game.
Yeah.
We only saw 2 pictures up on the screen.
Right.
What else were they? What were they checking for those 5 other instances? And that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to use it, you have to explain it.
See, one of the problems you've got there is that there's going to be many occasions in the build-up to a goal when you could probably find something that's probably not quite in the rules or that abides by the law. If it's a little pull of the shirt, a little push, a little trip as someone goes through. I mean, you've only got to look at. Can you imagine if VAR was in when Sam Allardyce was at Bolton, and they were pulling off all those tricks at free kicks, like pulling people off the end of a wall and stuff like that, knocking them over. Kevin Davis was fantastic at it. They wouldn't have scored any goals for 3 or 4 seasons, Bolton, if it had been in place then. So yeah, I mean, it just needs to be refined, doesn't it? I think it's they're testing it. I'm not sure whether using it in the Premier League is probably the right testing ground. Perhaps they should have done it in pre-season a little bit more for friendlies and just try to work it out a bit more. But it's definitely confusing it seems to be confusing for a lot of people at the stadium at the moment. And see the issue you've got. I mean, if you look at cricket, for example, it works brilliantly.
Yeah.
But obviously the issue you've got is cricket is a game that stops and starts all the time, whereas football is a game that generally flows. And you can only sort of stop it when the ball goes out of play, and that can be 60 to 90 seconds after an incident's taken place or after a goal. I mean, you've already had those crazy situations. Was it Holland?
Yeah,
where someone went up the other end, broke counter-attack, scored a goal, and they pulled it back for a penalty at the other end for something that happened about 90 seconds earlier. And those sort of things are a bit too much, but. As we said at the start, it's got to be refined. It's something they've got to look at. They've got to work closely with, and over time, I'm sure they'll get it right. I think there's 14 clubs in the Premier League which are going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
The amount of times West Ham have been look at the times. Do you remember the goal Kevin Nolan scored at Man United at Old Trafford a few years back? And it was like an inch offside. It was his shoulder or whatever, and they gave it. And there's absolutely no way that the naked eye could have seen that. I mean, it turned out that the linesman was correct.
Yeah.
But it was a guess, and he guessed because of the bias of Manchester United, one of the big teams who receive a lot of media attention, against West Ham, who don't receive as much. And so you can understand why the officials tend to err on the side of the big teams, because it's easier for them and it causes them less trouble. And VAR should, I stress should, level that playing field out a little bit, which is why I think it's good for clubs like West Ham. And we've seen it already. As I said, Man City, that goal that was disallowed, there's no way it would have been disallowed last year. I'm still not sure it should have been, really, but I kind of like the idea that it should be a little bit more, not clear and obvious, but it's got to be a really, really bad mistake. The one thing cricket's got right, I think, is what they, I believe, refer to the 50% rule, whereas if an umpire gives a decision, and it turns out it's wrong, but it's not wrong by a huge margin, then they let it stand. It's only if it's like we were referring to earlier, a Callum Wilson situation where it's so obviously a case of bending the rules that it should be cancelled. But it will take time, and I'm sure they'll get there in the end.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, because cricket and tennis and rugby, they've had it for donkey's years. They've had that technology for donkey's years, and the game has been perfected around it, which has its plus points and its minus points. But I'm sure. I mean, mate, you know as well as I do that football fans in general, not just West Ham fans, but football fans in general, will have a knee-jerk reaction if they don't like something automatically, without actually realizing what it's actually used what actually the full situation is. And I'm sure in a few years' time, we'll have a conversation where we say, "Do you remember when we talked about this?" And say, now this is working. It's doing this. The rules are changing and making a bit more sport, and making it more sport and less of a spectator sport, if that makes any sense. But talking about the pre-relegation times, it was very, very interesting. I'm not sure, Graeme, I'm not sure if you saw this, because I didn't see anything go up on your website. So, Masuaku's criticism from Matty Upson. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I did see it, and I'm sure those of us who watch Matthew Upson play at the heart of West Ham's defence will be wondering why he's criticising anybody.
Exactly.
That's what you meant, yeah.
For the people that didn't see it, the line that he was talking about says, Masuaku will make a ridiculous amount of mistakes. For me, he has too many touches of the ball. Does he remember how he played with us 9 years ago?
Yeah, he wasn't the greatest, was he? But he's a pundit. He's trying to earn a few bob, isn't he? But I mean, talking about Masuaku, I mean, my biggest issue with him is if you watch Brighton's goal on Saturday, and was it who was the goal scorer? Was it Trossard? Is that his name? Yeah. The guy who scored the goal. If you watch the build-up, Masuaku's in line with him when the move begins on the halfway line. By the time the shot's taken and it's put in the back of the net, Masuaku's just strolling back 15 yards away. It's an almost identical situation to Cresswell, Aaron Cresswell, for Man City's, I think it was their final goal the week before, where he kind of just gave up. And we raised this on Twitter last week, sort of saying, what club, what other Premier League club would that be acceptable to perform like that? Do you think Liverpool fans would let their players get away with, or even the staff would let their players get away with just strolling around and conceding goals? It just seems to be something about West Ham, that we're a bit like, oh well, we expected to lose anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, that's a problem, isn't it? The left back area is a real problem for us at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
neither of the boys are performing there.
I mean, mate, as far back as I can remember being a West Ham supporter, I don't think we've had a season where we haven't questioned the defence. To be 100% honest with you,
I think the reason of that is, I mean, we traditionally, since they've come to the club, the current administration, the current board, don't spend big on defenders. I mean, how much have we spent on fullbacks in the last 10 years since they've been here? How many fullbacks do you know that we've actually paid for? I mean, we've spent a couple of million on Byram. Masuaku we paid 6 million for, and Cresswell. Zabaleta was a free. Ryan Fredericks was a free.
Yeah.
We don't spend big traditionally. All right, Diop to be fair, give them credit. They went out and spent big, and that was a really good signing.
Which was interesting to find out that was David Sullivan's target. Oh, that was I couldn't believe that when I read that. At the end of last season, I was just like, really, because he has, we touched on it earlier that he has a lot of bad press, and I'm not a big fan of him either, to be honest with you. A couple of up until last summer, every time there was something Sullivan in the paper, was like, I'm not reading this. I just don't care what that little Welshman has to say, to be honest with you. But hats off to the guy. I mean, if the report was true that Sullivan was the one that wanted to bring in Diop, then hats off to the guy. And he's still showing that he's got a bit of nonce, but he's just still of a nonce himself. But I mean, for me personally, who I would start at Watford, and I've been saying this for quite a while now, is I want to see Ben Johnson again. I really want to see how he gets on, because he had a brilliant pre-season. His debut was Reece Oxford levels in terms of how everybody was absolutely raving about him. But at the same point, I just think that you're absolutely right. With Creswell and Masuaku issue, as much as I love both players, they've both got the big enough faults for me to think, well, actually, why don't we just try a junior in place? Has had a better pre-season than both of those two combined, to be fair.
Yeah, he's certainly done okay when he's come on, hasn't he? Young Ben, he hasn't let himself down at all. I mean, my view is that Masuaku's not a defender anyway. I think he's a winger. I don't think he can defend for Toffee. And Cresswell,
he said on his Twitter account his Instagram account a couple of times, he's a winger. He's not a defender. I mean, fair play to him. He's better at it now than he was this time last year. But yeah, he's an attacking player.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think you see the best of him when he's running at people rather than backing off people and trying to defend. But I mean, the thing we've got to remember about Ben is that he's actually a right-sided defender. He's not a left back, but he's one of those lads who's quite flexible and that he's quite happy to play in both sides.
And he can play with both feet as well, if I remember correctly. He's dual-footed.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it always amazes me that professional footballers exist that can't kick with both feet. I mean, Trevor Brooking always tells the story about how his dad used to tie his right foot tie his right foot up so he couldn't use it, so he had to kick with his left foot, so he would become two-footed. But that stuns me even today when you see a player avoiding taking a shot, for example, on his wrong side. So he can get it on his favoured foot. It should be a prerequisite for being a professional footballer, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I mean, he's pretty flexible, and why not? I mean, the two lads are struggling. Aaron Cresswell's out of form. He's hit a real dip, hasn't he, for the last few months, really. And I like him. I like Aaron Cresswell. I think he's a really gutsy player. He's a typical Scouse defender as far as I'm concerned. I like him, but he's out of form, and so I just don't think Masuaku is a defender. But the problem is, JP, we've got so many wingers and attacking midfielders at the moment. He's never going to get a place in the starting 11 in his favoured position. I'm presuming that is his favoured position. So that's where he's going to have to earn his dough at the moment. But yeah, why not chuck Ben in and see if he can swim?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's nice. It's nice to know that we've, like you say, you're right. His natural position is a right back. But bearing in mind, I hate to say this, but bearing in mind Zabaleta's leaving at the end of the season, it's a prime example for him to say right. And also to say we're talking about now with the Creswell and the Masuaku issue, that this is the perfect time for him, especially with Newport coming up this time next week. For him to play either left back or right back and just go, this is what I can do, boss. That's one of the things that I love about being a West Ham supporter, is the fact that we don't, even under Allardyce, bizarre as it is, that we still were seeing juniors coming through, not on a regular basis as it was as we were previously, but it's nice to see Rice cementing himself properly now. It's nice to know that we've got players that people are talking about, still like Nathan Holland, let's say Ben Johnson as well. Just players that we just really want to see progress, because that's why we love West Ham so much. And talking of which, I was staggered at this when I saw this yesterday. Yesterday was the 13th anniversary of Carlton Cole's debut. It really doesn't feel that long ago. I was 13 years ago. It was Southampton, I think, if I remember correctly, because I definitely remember him scored on his debut.
He scored after about 2 minutes, didn't he? I seem to recall it was quite early, but
it was one of the quickest goals I've ever seen. That's for
yeah.
sure. I mean, as a West Ham supporter, you remember quick goals because we don't get to see them all that often.
No, this is true. This is true. No, he was a good servant for us, Colton. And it's quite funny because if you look back, one of the first things he said upon joining the club was that he intended to use West Ham as a bit of a stepping stone, because it obviously came from Chelsea. He'd smashed all sorts of records in their U team, scoring an abundance of goals for their under-21s over there, and he really saw West Ham as a stepping stone. But I guess in the end, he came to. Let's be honest, he wasn't good enough to go and play for a Man U or an Arsenal at the time. And he was a perfect fit for West Ham, and he just really sort of exactly fitted in well to the club, and the fans took to him, and he became a bit of a cult hero, didn't he, in the end?
Yeah, I mean the stupid thing is he wasn't the best of strikers in any shape or form. There was players around him 10 times better. I mean, Dino, for example. It still breaks my heart every time I think about that Man United overhead kick, and then them being subbed off a couple of minutes later. I mean, it was funny that he did that for Mark Noble's testimonial when he scored. He did that straight away sort of thing. That was quite funny to see. But yeah, it was I mean, my first proper West Ham game was Macclesfield Town at the Bowling, when we had Carlton Cole and Dean Ashton and a very, very young and James Bond looking Mark Noble.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't the best of games. That was the one that went to extra time. But I remember that was my first ever proper West Ham game, and I remember shouting at Noble, not realizing it was Noble. I kept calling him Bond. I was getting so angry with him. We had a terrible time.
Was that the game when Savon Hines scored the winner in injury time? Do we get a couple in injury time? Yeah.
That's the one.
That.
And it wasn't. Oh, but
I think the thing is sort of going back to what you were saying there about young players. I mean, one of the problems we've had is that we've not been producing enough young players through the academy in recent years, and part of that is down to David Sullivan's insistence that I spoke to DS. Again, I think it was August actually in 2014. We did a big interview down there over at his house, and he told me at the time that they can spend an awful lot of money bringing up a kid from the age of 6 to sort of 19, 20, and that they might not just be good enough, and they've invested an awful lot of money, and it's essentially been wasted. Or they can go out and spend 250 grand on a Jordan Brown or a Declan Rice. And obviously that policy started to pay off. But the problem we've had is that a lot of our homegrown youngsters that have looked like coming through the ranks just haven't worked out. I mean, you can go back to Rob Hall 5 or 6 years ago, who was mustard, absolute mustard.
I loved him
when he came through.
I thought that this is it. We've got him for years.
Yeah, he was going to be a terrific player, and then he went to Bolton. I have no idea where he is now, but he's fallen off the radar. Then you've obviously got the biggest name recently is Reece Oxford, who was, we all saw what he did against Arsenal on that debut and at the age of 16. But it's not just him. You've got people like Josh Pask, for example, who is really highly rated, and another one who's just disappeared really. So it's tough. It's tough, and the problem is you've got to be so good now to come through the youth system and make it. I mean, someone like Grady Diangana, for example, 20 years ago, he'd probably be playing in the first team week in, week out by now. But he's not just playing up against local lads or people from the UK. He's now fighting against people from all around the world, and it's so difficult to break into the first team.
And isn't it bloody typical that he scores a brace and has an assist on his first game for West Brom?
Yeah, no, that was really good. But that's
struggling against Brighton, and I know they're two different teams and everything, but it's that is the West Ham way for me. It's bloody typical that we put out. I mean, I love Grady. I think he's a brilliant footballer. Yes, he's got a lot of confidence issues, and he needs to have a bit more of to bulk himself up a little bit. But that I have absolutely loved what he did in pre-season. Great going down to West Brom under Slav. I think it's a brilliant idea because he's. I was going to say he's guaranteed to be playing every week, but it's a bit arrogant to say that. But Slav knows him properly, so he knows how. And bearing in mind that West Brom are doing a push to get back to come up again this season, so what better place for Grady to prove himself than being in the Championship, playing under a manager that knew him, what he was capable of, just as he started to progress out of the academy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the youngsters going out on loan. I mean, it used to be they'd go out at 17 and 18. I mean, you probably remember Jermaine Defoe going down to Bournemouth when he was 18, and he broke the league record, didn't it? It existed since the 1930s, and I think he scored in his first 12 consecutive games for Bournemouth, which is something else. But it was the making of him. He came back to West Ham and he was a man because he'd been playing against these 33-year-old experienced defenders who would kick him up in the air all day long. So he's a little bit more clever and a little bit more experienced. Rio Ferdinand, same thing, went out on loan, making of him. So it does work. It certainly can work. I mean, and the issue, the thing with Grady is that he's not gone down to I still call it Division 4 because I'm old, but it's like League 2 and League 1 or whatever they call it these days.
Yeah.
He's doing it in the Championship, which is tough. It's a very, very good standard. It's a very high standard these days. So if he can do it there, then. But the thing is, even if he comes back, even if he has a great season, who's he going to knock out the team? JP? Is he going to knock Anderson out? No. Is he going to knock Yarmolenko out the side? Maybe. It's tough. It's tough. It's not easy.
I mean. But he's, if I remember correctly from reading his not his bio exactly, but his history, isn't he more of an attacking midfielder than an actual winger? I think I might be wrong, but I'm sure I read somewhere that he's better off in the more of a central role, like Walcott always tried to have as well. But I mean, people criticise players for going out on loan to lower clubs. I mean, not to turn the Air Brown a second by talking about a certain Spurs player, but he was loaned out to 7 or 8 clubs, and now he's one of England's best strikers. So it works. I mean, what was it? Even Noble was out on loan to Ipswich, and what was the other club he was loaned out to?
Graeme, you're asking now. I can't remember actually.
It was it Braintree or no? It wasn't Braintree, but it was somebody relatively local to where.
No idea. You've got me on that one, JP. I don't know. You got me there.
But people think that when players go out on loan, it makes them a failure. Well, no, because like you're saying, it depends on how and where they're going to be able to play in the parent club. And talking of which, actually, I'm very, very glad that I was not really talking, but it's along the same sort of lines that Fornals has actually come out and been honest with everybody by the looks of it, saying that it's difficult, it's hard playing in the Premier League. I mean, for me, he's got a bit more credit in the bank as far as I'm concerned, because he could have come out and said, yeah, I don't know what's wrong, blah blah blah. But no, he's come out and said, it's a different league. It's really hard to play at this style, but he wants to try it, and that's what we all love about West Ham supporters. Is just we want somebody. It doesn't matter if come on, look at the players we talked about so far. They haven't been the most prolific of players, but they've given their all. Carlton Cole is a prime example of that. I'm really, really interested to see what happens with Pablo, because I think he's got the under 21s. European tournament really showcased him and Ceballos as well. Those two, obviously we were linked to Ceballos at one point, and those two have they look brilliant. I mean, I know Ceballos has got a lot better players around him, and therefore he's showing his qualities better. But at the same point, we've got Lanzini, who's very close to getting a new contract from what I've been reading the last few days, which I'm loving the fact, because Graeme, what are your thoughts about Lanzini and Fornals? Do you think they'll be able to play together?
We seem to be experiencing a similar issue to the problem that Sven-Göran Eriksson had for England, aren't we, a few years ago with Lampard and
Gerrard and Lampard stuff, yeah.
Gerrard and Lampard in the middle. You know, you can't play them together, but you can't leave them both out. And of course, he's and you know, he used to put Gerrard on the left, didn't he? Which was a crazy decision. But yeah, we've got a problem in that midfield at the moment. You know, I mean, poor Jack Wilshere has been like a fish out of water for the last 2 games. I mean, he's worked his socks off.
Yeah,
but the game's just passed him by. You know, at Brighton, he was just watching the ball fly over his head in that first half, and rightly Pellegrini took him off and made a change, and it made us a little bit better. Perhaps not quite so secure, but you know, we looked a more coherent outfit as a result.
Well, definitely with Antonio coming on, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the thing about Antonio is he's a grafter.
Yeah,
and he's also got quite a bit of strength, and that's the one thing we lack in that midfield. I mean, you've got Declan Rice, who's a lovely player, but you know, he's young and he's learning the game, and he does tend to get muscled off the ball sometimes. Wilshere's not the biggest. Obviously, Lanzini is a fleet-footed player, and he's a different kind of player. So but this is an issue we outlined. You know, it's not a surprise to me, because we said this during the transfer window, that we're still lacking what, you know, you might refer to as a nasty bastard in the middle. Someone like you know, I know we were linked with Medel, who might not be technically the best player, but he would have done that job for us. He would have broke up play and just, you know, filtered the ball to the runners and the technical players, and that's what we miss at the moment. And Wilshere's not that player. He you know, he can't play along Rice. And the funny thing is, the player whose stock is increasing most since the season began as a player who's not even kicked the ball yet, and that's Mark Noble.
Yeah,
because he can play with Rice. He can play alongside Rice, and they work together well. And so you know, but it's no surprise, and that's why I can understand why people are sort of perhaps saying, you know, why did we buy Fornals? He's quite similar to what we've got. You know, when we could have invested that money elsewhere in the team. Sanchez is obviously nobody's favourite. You know, he hasn't exactly covered himself in glory since he arrived at the club. I mean, to his credit, he's been injured for an awful lot of time. But I think that's what we're lacking. The side is unbalanced. But it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. We knew this in the summer, and there was a lot of people sort of saying, you know, we need to sort of have a look at that and balance it out a bit. Again, you could, you know, we spoke earlier about the fullback positions. It's something we've not addressed. You know, we've given Masuaku a 6-year contract or whatever it is, but in my view, as I said, he's not a defender, and we don't. And Dave Sullivan doesn't seem to spend an awful lot of money. He certainly doesn't spend money on fullbacks. No. You know, as I said, they invested well with Diop. It was a good signing, and I like the look of Cardoso, the other new lad. But you know, he's a long way from being a first team regular at 18 years old. There's not many kids at 18 who can walk into a Premier League team and you know, make it their own. So, you know, you sort of wonder whether we could have perhaps invested some of the money elsewhere, but we've got what we've got, and this is where we are until January, and Pellegrini's going to have to make a fist of it. Just do the best he can until then.
Yeah, Charlie's made an absolutely, I think he's absolutely smacked it right on the head. So I don't think we should be trying to play everyone at once. I think we should be tailoring tactics and playing players depending on who we're facing. 100%, Charlie, I agree. Definitely. One thing that I just we'll talk about, just one thing about the Brighton goal. We did touch on it a little bit earlier, and about the Cardoso as well, is for me personally, if Ogbonna doesn't sort himself out, I really think he's going to be permanently dropped. Now, one thing that irritates me about defenders, yes, I know that Diop could have done better for the goal, but one thing I absolutely hate, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what club it is, doesn't even matter what tournament it is, I do not want to be seeing defenders doing what Ogbonna did by turning your back when you're 3 yards away from the ball. That I really can't stand. I didn't notice it when I was watching when I did the live stream talking about the game, but when I watched it back on Match of the Day, I was screaming at the telly.
Yeah,
and even my housemate, who's a Liverpool supporter, he said defenders shouldn't be doing that. You know why? why do that? You're supposed to be there to stop the ball, not to turn yourself away from it and pretend you're looking at it.
Yeah, but I think, John, this comes back to what we're saying about, we don't invest in our defence really, with the exception of Diop. What did we pay for Ogbon? About 7-8 million, wasn't it? I think,
Give or take, yeah.
Which, I mean, in modern days, that's loose change, isn't it? Essentially, for a top class defender. But yes, it doesn't matter how much you cost. You should still be paying attention, and you should still be, But that was such a very West Ham thing to do, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Score a goal against a run of play, go 1-up. And the first thing you do in those circumstances is you sit and you hang on to that lead, and you take the sting out. You take the sting out of the opposition. And what do? We folded. 2 or 3 minutes later, and they're level. And it wasn't the first chance they had. After we scored, there was another opportunity or two in between that. And it was, you're sitting there watching that, and you're just thinking, this is inevitable, that they're going to equalise, and that's something. I put a post on Twitter last week just to see what people thought about mentioning about. It's almost like part of the club's DNA, that we're not winners, and we're not, we don't have that killer instinct that. I hate to say it, but clubs like Liverpool do have, and they've possessed for many years. That you've only got to look at that European Cup when they were 3-0 down at half time, and they somehow come back to win it. Could you see West Ham doing that? It's all right. We did it at West Brom, didn't we? That time, I think, when Scotty Parker had a mini fit at half time. But it's we don't do that as a club, and you knew that was going to happen. You sort of looking at that, thinking, and I just wonder if that kind of gets through to the players, and they're a bit like, well, I'm only at West Ham, I'm not at Man U, so it doesn't really matter as much. But yeah, it's the fundamentals, it's things like that. It's as I said earlier, it's Masuaku trotting back from the halfway line rather than following his mark all the way. It's all the little things, but that's down to the manager. He's got to get hold of the players, and he's got to iron that out.
Definitely. I mean, I don't like to criticise Pellegrini. I think he did wonders for us last season. I really think he did. Coming out saying this is the squad that he wanted wasn't the best of moves for him to do. To be honest with you, especially bearing in mind, as far as I'm concerned, the reason why we conceded 4 goals in the second half against Man City was because Antonio came off, who was absolutely giving them trouble, and likewise, as we mentioned earlier, Antonio coming on at Brighton changed the game. We were much better with him. I know a lot of people. Charlie's going to hate me for saying this, but I know a lot of people have got his critics, and I can understand it. I can understand that. He's not the best of players, but he's a rarity nowadays, as far as I'm concerned, in the Premier League, of somebody that won't, like I say, he's a grafter. He just won't give up trying. I close my eyes when he goes to score. I really do, because I don't want to keep seeing the ball going up to Rose Ed again. But I admire him for that passion. I've shouted a lot, especially the season before last under Moyes, when he was flapping about, shouting at Moyes he wanted to come off and all that sort of stuff. But I really admire him. I really think that he's going to be very pivotal for us this season. And but at the same point, who would you start over him? Yarmolenko?
The thing is about Antonio. He's a West Ham player. He's a Carlton Cole. He's a Matty Everington.
Yeah.
He's one of those players who will do well at West Ham, but he's not quite good enough to go and do it at a better club, which is why he's here. But he's one of those players like Carlton who's capable of putting the ball in Rose Ed 3 out of every 4 shots. And then on that 4th shot, he's going to score a goal like he did against Tottenham, which was an absolute fantastic goal.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And win us the game. We needed that. The problem I think the problem we had with Saturday was that Hernandez, and obviously he scored a goal in the second half, but it doesn't work in that system, and people, you can quite easily see that you cannot play one up front with Hernandez on his own, because he just doesn't get involved in the game enough. He doesn't provide an outlet. He can't hold the ball up to bring the wingers or the attacking midfielders into play. That's not his game. His game is to work as a little bit like Tony Cotter used to be when he was working with Machiavelli, just to pick up scraps and put the ball in the 6-yard box. I mean, I think every goal he's ever scored in the Premier League's been inside the penalty area, isn't it? I don't think he's ever scored from outside the penalty area, which says it all. And that's why I think we looked a little bit better on Saturday, because sticking Antonio up there, maybe it wasn't a traditional 4-4-2. Antonio was sort of roving a little bit more, but having that foil or being that foil for Antonio made us look a little bit better. I like Antonio. I mean, I don't think he does silly goal celebrations and that, doesn't he? But I like him. I think he's an honest, as I said, he's a grafter. He's an honest player. Yeah. And apart from that little spell he had when he perhaps got a little bit too big for his boots at the end of Slav's reign, he's been a really good servant for us, especially for the money we paid for him.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that I really hated about him, is that level of arrogance that he had. What was it, the start of last season when he did that video with, I think it was Sky Sports, when he was going over his FIFA rankings? So shut up. Your levels are there for a reason. Like most football players nowadays, massively overinflated ego. But yes, you're right. He seems to have a bit of more of a new lease of life under Pellegrini, and it's going to his credit. I mean, Mark DJ Bloke has made actually quite a good point. I think So he said, I slagged off Antonio last season, but he has been our best player, given 110%. Yeah, I know we're only 2 games in, but he's been very, very pivotal, as I said. So thanks, Mark. I'm glad you agree with me on that. But guys, we're just going to round this up just very, very quickly, but because it's gone well over the time I was planning to, because I've got to go onto the Facebook page in a minute and do the Fantasy League roundup. But one thing I do want to talk about, Graeme, is we talked about just off camera before we went live, is the Brighton result itself. Now, yes, there's a massively big argument that we massively underperformed for the majority of that game. But let's not forget that regardless of pundits tipping Brighton to go down to be relegated this season purely because of the system under Houghton for the last those 2 seasons, he did brilliantly to keep him up the first time round, brilliantly to get him promoted the season before that, and I think it was a little bit harsh for him to be sacked last season. But I get it the reasons at the same point. Charlie Potter has got them playing fantastic football. Sorry, Graham Potter, I should say. Was one of the 2. They played against Watford very, very well. Surprised everybody, including Watford. And their abilities they played against us was took a lot of people by surprise. And this is the funny thing, because I remember when do you remember when we had to do the replay against Man United in the FA Cup? Under Allardyce, that we were on the verge of winging it, and that bloody Van Persie goal that caused the replay up at Old Trafford. Do you remember that, Graeme?
That wasn't the Payet game, was it?
No, this was under Allardyce. This was when what's his name? We had a junior breakthrough that season, very, very short period of time.
Right.
Oh God! It was a son of our previous defender. From the oh God, I can see the geezer's face. But anyway, me and a mate.
Carry on, it'll come to me in a minute.
Say again?
I said carry on, it'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah, it will. Once I've stopped talking about it, I'll remember the name. Now you watch. But me and a mate who's a Man United supporter, we watched the replay at mine, and oh God, because it's really pivotal that I say this, that who the player is, but he absolutely made what was it? Was it yeah, I can't remember which man. I'm not.
This one's going well, mate, isn't it? This is.
I'm not good with names. I'm really not good with names. This is quite a few years back as well, for that matter. But he was.
Look. If you look at your comments, Teapot Pixies just posted Dan Potts. Is that what you're thinking of?
That's it, Dan Potts. Thank you very much. Yeah, Dan Potts. He was defending that night and made Valencia look terrible. that
Yeah.
game. I remember that, and
Yeah.
we were sitting there, and I shouted at the telly, "Well done, Dan, brilliant!" And my mate at exactly the same moment said, "What are you doing? You should be playing better than that." And that's the difference. The difference of perspective that everybody gets. Nobody reads the game in the same way. But yeah, it was absolutely hysterical watching that. And there's the same way with the Brighton game, right? It's just, yes, okay, last time we played them, we drew at the London Stadium. We haven't beaten them since we were down in the Championship. We still haven't. Getting a point against a Brighton team that is as mediocre as everybody's trying to make him out to be, I think is a very good result. I hate to say it. I mean, Graeme, I'm sure you said it with gritted teeth the same way that I have a few times, but football is a results-based business. To get a point against somebody that we've not been able to get anything from since we went down in the Championship, I think is a really, really good thing. I was very and I honestly think that's the message that Snodgrass was trying to put over, because I know people have been giving him a lot of grief for what he was saying about it's a decent result, because it's a decent result. A draw against Brighton is a decent result. I mean, what do you think about that, Graeme?
Well, firstly, I think I should just say that it's lovely to see Dan Potts doing so well down at Luton. They've got themselves up into the Championship. Obviously, they played against Slav and Diangana at the weekend, didn't they? That was the team they beat. So it's good to see. It's like West Ham light, isn't it, down there at the moment at Kenilworth Road? So it's great to see them doing so well. But I mean, I think one of the big problems we've got is that there was an awful lot of people that had possibly misguided views of how we were going to do this season, how we were going to start. The fact that we broke our transfer record on Haller, made a lot of people. There was some ridiculous notions being passed around social media that this is the year West Ham are going to break into the top six, and we, as we referred to earlier, we've made some good signings. We brought Haller in. Fornells, I think, is a lovely player. I think he's a really good acquisition, and he's exactly the sort of player that we should be investing in. However, we've still got this issue of the squad being unbalanced. We've discussed already that mean bastard at the heart of the midfield who can sit there and help Declan out. We've established or spoken about the fact that our fullbacks probably aren't quite up to scratch at the moment. When you consider that the way the game's going at the moment, I mean, you look at Pep Guardiola. I mean, he spends all his money on fullbacks. That's where he invests most heavily, and they're very important in the way modern football's going. So I think a lot of people went into the start of the season with sort of heightened expectations that probably weren't really quite accurate. We got a bit of a rude awakening on the opening game of the season against Man City. I don't think anybody expected us to lose 5-0. I still think I don't. I know it's Man City. I know they're probably one of the strongest club sides that's ever been built in the history of football. But I'm still a little bit old-fashioned in thinking that you don't lose 5-0 at home to anyone at this level. It's Sunday leagues, but that's a different story. But I thought we were a bit unprofessional in the way we played there in that second half. Brighton, good team. They've done well. Graham Potter's obviously an experienced coach. He's got a very, very good record, and they've bought well. And they've sort of grown organically, haven't they? And they've done it the right way.
Yeah.
They've not invested huge amounts. They've boosted the squad each year since they've come up. And they're now at the stage where they can probably start thinking about not having to worry about fighting relegation every year. They could probably be thinking about sort of sitting in the top half of the bottom half, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that was a problem. I think too many people thought West Ham would do a lot better this season just because of the couple of really good players we brought in. To me, I think we're going to struggle to do what we did last season. I think we'll do well to finish in the top half, judging from what I've seen so far this season and in pre-season. I think 10th will probably be a decent finish with the squad we've got. But it would probably be slightly unfair to criticise the board because since we, since the fans said we'd had enough after that the Burnley game, and I know that those who backed the board maintain that it had nothing to do with it, but I find that very unlikely. I'm sure that if that event hadn't occurred, they wouldn't have spent so heavily last summer, and I think they followed that up, all right, not to the same degree this summer, but the investment's been there for the last 18 months, and I think a lot of the people that have issues with the board aren't really too worried about that side of things at the moment. It's the other things in terms of the stadium and that sort of thing that really sort of rile and the the sort of mistruths that were told in terms of getting us over there. But I'm veering off the point a little bit. And in terms of Brighton, yeah, I mean, I think that was a fairly decent result in the circumstances. It always used to be the case that, if you could win your home games and not lose your away games, you was going to have a really decent season.
Yeah.
So looking at it from that perspective, then yes, it wasn't a bad result, but I can't say I was too impressed by the way we played. I felt we were lucky to escape, and I felt we did escape with a draw, even though we took the lead and Antonio could and probably should have won it in the final minute of added on time. But this goes back right to what we were saying about Antonio being a West Ham player. 3 times out of 4, he's going to miss those chances. So, I think if you take all things into consideration, it was a decent point. It was, but I would like to see us play a little bit better and a bit more coherently at Watford this weekend, especially given that they've struggled and they're going to be under intense pressure from their own fans to put on a performance.
Guys, thank you very much for your time, and Graeme, thank you very much for watching, mate. Just going to watching for spending the time to talk to me tonight. There's just 2 questions I want to ask. First of all, I will get Charlie's question, which is, once it loads up.
It's not about his wrestling again, is it?
No. So, would you rather fight 10 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck?
Right. Okay. So
now this is from a man who doesn't drink, by the way. So it's weird how he came with this question.
He must have been smoking something then in that case. I don't know. I would probably run from both of them and let them catch up with someone slower.
I think for me personally, it's going to be the duck-sized horses, mate. I think right. I'd rather take that on. Me being over 6 foot would actually be quite easy from one point of view, I suppose. And the other question I want to ask you isn't mine. It's a question from Darren, who's over in Bangkok. He's been following the channel pretty much right from day one, and has only literally just got an actual representation account of him. He's had some very strange names over the last couple of years. But his question is, my question to prelude his question is, first of all, Graeme, do you eat Thai curry?
Do I eat Thai curry?
Yeah,
I do eat Thai curry. Yeah, not frequently, but it certainly has passed my lips on occasion. Yeah, very nice too. Very nice.
So, because obviously there's 3 types. There's red, green, and yellow. Which is your favourite out of the 3?
It'd have to be red, I guess.
Same as me.
This is all very odd. Where is it? Is this going somewhere? I didn't realise it was on a culinary.
Because when I started getting guests on, he said, "Look, can you ask them?" Because obviously the time difference between the UK and Bangkok, he can't get to watch them.
Gotcha.
So he asked me that every guest that I get on, can you ask him this question? Because he's really curious about knowing that. It's not preluding to anything. I mean,
he's not opening a restaurant or anything, and he's looking for advice.
Darren was very, very kind. Last summer, he sent me over quite a few Thai curry sauces, which unfortunately I hate to say I haven't used yet.
Right.
But it's so he's fascinated about people's curry diets. It really is. It's great though. It's
okay.
It threw Charlie, because Charlie went, "No, I don't eat it." So it's the only one that hasn't been able to answer that. But
what was his favourite, JP? Just out of interest.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good question. Actually, I'll ask him.
What
his favourite is. Yeah, he's been trying to get me into it since the beginning of May, and he hasn't actually told me what his is yet.
There you go.
But guys, thank you very, very much for watching. If you like the channel and you're new to the channel, then welcome. It'd be great to have you on board. We're very, very close to getting to 1,000 subscribers now. We're going to get a commemorative 1,000 subscriber plaque done, so I need to know who that subscriber is. But guys, if you're watching the replay of this, put your comments in the comment section below of any questions that you've got, or any on your thoughts on what Graeme and I have discussed. Guys in the chat, thank you very much for joining in. It's been an absolute pleasure seeing a lot of the conversations you've had. Jason, Charlie, Mark, Teapot Pixie as well. Even Metal Legs was in earlier. It's absolutely brilliant for you guys to participate in it. It's brilliant. If you like the video and you feel we deserve it, then by all means, please click the like button and share this content with anybody you feel that may want to watch the channel as well. So I am now going to disappear off, and I'm going over to the Facebook page to round up the Premier League Fantasy League Goal Week 2. If you want to jump on to watch that as well, go on to facebook.com/JPWHUTV. You can contact me through all the social media with that as well. On Twitter, I'm on Instagram. I think there's a Reddit account somewhere floating around as well. So guys, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. You will see me on Thursday night when I come out with the Watford away preview, and I will also be doing the watch with again for Watford away, going live at 10 to 3 on Saturday afternoon. Hopefully that little Herbert who was who got me really panicked, who jumped on there, me thinking he was actually hacked my account because he had the username exact the same name as the channel. Obviously figured out that it wasn't him. He was just some little virgin trying to piss around. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you very, very soon. All the best now.